Before I start, I want to poll the audience, if I can. How many of you, your company is more than 2 years old? More than 2 years? All right, pretty much everybody. All right, how many it's more than 5 years old? All right, still a lot. 10? Okay, more than 15 years old? All right, what about 20? Any 20? All right, wow, let's give them a round of applause. That's a long time. All right. Well, my name is Brandon Youngdale. I'm coming from Phone.com. Phone.com was started in 2007. I think we were on some of the earliest versions of Asterisk and Freeswitch. And I joined in 2015. So that's 8 years of water under the bridge with the VoIP stack before I joined. And as any of you know, even if you're only 2 years old, you might already have sort of a legacy system in there. All right, it might already be some elements that are starting to feel a little crusty, starting to be a little slow. You're kind of avoiding it because you don't want to work on it yet. And with ChatGPT now, and if you're deploying ChatGPT code to production, you might have even more problems. And the truth is, the pain is real when it comes to real-time communication and when it starts to get old and crusty, right? And you probably have experienced some of this, maybe not all of it, but it looks a little bit like this. Clients or customers say their phone's light is flickering. That's kind of the only information they give, but they're complaining about it. They're not getting calls. Maybe they don't have dial tone. Calls aren't connecting at inexplicable times. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're not, and it's your job to figure out why. Certain users are complaining about audio cutting out. Not all users, just certain ones. And you can't seem to find a rhyme or reason of which ones are having those problems. Overall, customers are mad. I think we've all experienced that. The business is being impacted. Oh, and also, by the way, product has a really good new idea. All right? Yes, it's AI. And they don't think it'll be that hard to implement. All right? Why is this happening? Why are we in this situation? Right? You've inherited the system. Maybe you built it, but you kind of let it run on its own for a while, and now you're having to revisit it because of all these problems that are surfacing. And this is happening mostly for 3 reasons. All right? You can't fix bugs, you can't add new features, and you can't scale. Or maybe it's just one of those, maybe it's just 2 of those. And oftentimes they kind of come in a trio, and it's all 3 at once. All right, bugs take too long to troubleshoot. A report comes in, and you're spending a day, a couple of days, just trying to troubleshoot to find out why this bug all of a sudden surfaced. Right? I didn't deploy anything. Why is someone complaining? All right, adding new features. Right? You're afraid to add a new feature because you're probably just going to create more bugs, and you don't want to do that. So, someone has an idea and you kind of just want to poo-poo it right away. Like, no, please don't ask for anything else. All right? And then you can't scale because your system starts looking like this, right? You fix a bug and you just try to get it out as fast as you can, right? I'm not guaranteeing this isn't going to cause more bugs, but I know we got to make this customer happy. Let's roll it out, all right? A new feature comes in. Okay, I'm going to do exactly what you said, but I'm just going to kind of pile it on top of what's there, do the minimal I can so we can move on with our life. And eventually, once you need to scale and the pressure's applied, just like this wall, it feels like it's going to topple over, and it very well might. But before I go any further, it's called modernizing a legacy VoIP stack. And often legacy can be a positive term, right? We want to leave a legacy for our kids, right? We want to leave a legacy for the people who come after us. And I don't know about any of you, but the code I write, it's so good. It doesn't need to be commented. It doesn't need documentation. It certainly doesn't need tests. And you can pretty much deploy to production and just let it lie. The problem is, I say potato, and the developer that comes after me says potato. He sees technical debt, right? He sees what I wrote, and it feels like just technical debt to him. He doesn't know what the requirements were for the code I wrote. Just like the code that I inherited, I look at it, the system I inherited, I say, what is wrong with these people? What were they thinking? And it's because they had requirements, they had pressures that I don't have, and I'm in a situation that was different from them. So a few things to keep in mind. If you're looking at your legacy system, you want to modernize it, you want to make changes, is old doesn't necessarily mean bad, okay? Just because it's old doesn't mean it's bad. Just because it's complex doesn't mean it's complicated, right? Sometimes we look and we go, why did they do it this way? I mean, they're doing all this. I would do it so much better. And then you start working on it, and you kind of start to realize, oh, this feature is complex. This situation is complex. I'm just recreating the same thing they already did. And unique does not equal unwieldy, right? In each of our businesses, we probably have something that's proprietary, that's unique to your business, the way you do it, and it's probably the thing you find most annoying when you're trying to work on your system and on your code. But it doesn't have to be unwieldy. Maybe it's just unique. Maybe it's just the thing that makes your company special, all right? And always remember, pride cometh before the fall. When you're looking at your legacy system, try to have respect for those who came before, because otherwise you're just going to recreate the same problems. All right, so what can we do? And when I was thinking about what I can do to help anyone who's here, if they're looking at their legacy stack and they're saying, I got to start making improvements, all right? I didn't want this to be sort of a tutorial. I could have walked you through exactly what we did at phone.com, because like I said, by the time I joined, that was 8 years, all right? And by the time I kind of became the lead developer, it was really 10 years since it started. And I could kind of walk you through step by step how, but instead I want to give you principles, because we've had a lot of good technical talks, right? And you should take those and apply them to your system, to your situation. And what I want to do is I want to give you principles to be able to do that. Take all these great talks, go watch the old talks from old ClueCons, and you can make this happen, all right? The way Ari, our CEO, says it is you're changing the engine while the car is running, right? And it's just a beautiful picture of what you're trying to do. You're in the car, and you're changing the engine, and it's going down the highway. And that's sort of your only option, but you can do it. And I want to show you how we did it, give you the principles that we followed, so you can apply it to your situation as well. All right. So the 3 steps is, 1, you got to understand your system. You have to create the right culture. And then you have to block and tackle. Okay, and I'll explain each of those as we go. But there's really 2 audiences I want to talk to, because there's always these 2 audiences here at ClueCon. There's leaders and there's contributors. Right? And maybe some of you, you're both in one, right? And you're like, it's just me. And so you can take this and talk to yourself in the mirror afterwards. And first you're the leader, then you're the contributor, and go back and forth. But it's always both. And the truth is, without a good leader, the contributors are just going to get burned out. Too many requests coming in, too many changing priorities. And without a good leader, they're going to get burned out, and you're going to start building that wall again. But without good contributors, the leader is just hamstrung. He can't do anything. He might have a vision, but he can't implement it because he doesn't have good contributors, so we have to address both. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is understanding your system. And as a leader, what you have to do is you have to give the right people the right amount of time. All right, you have to find the right people in your company, and you have to give them the right amount of time to understand the system. And I put this little chart together, the spectrum. This hasn't been verified in any scientific arena, but by anecdote, it works. And so you have usually, when you're dealing with VoIP engineering, Dave Horton at ComCon last year made a great point. He said, us VoIP folks, we have a very strange set of skills, right? Not necessarily good or bad, just strange set of skills, because when you're dealing with real-time communication, you're kind of a software developer, you're kind of a network person, you're kind of a sysadmin, you're all of those in once. But on your team, you might have different people on different parts of the spectrum. If you have a pure software developer, he's sitting there saying, what is SIP, right? And you ask him to start working on a Freeswitch system or her on a Freeswitch system, right? And then he's going to go in and he's going to say, what's a SIP profile? And why does it have credentials? And why is there a context that goes to a dial plan? And there's all these XML things that I have to do just so I can go to my application and start writing code. He's going to get frustrated, and you have to give him time to understand how Freeswitch works, to appreciate how Freeswitch works, so that you can move forward. And then on the other side, you might have more VoIP engineers who are more IT, right, skill set, a little more operationally minded, right? They don't mind going in and messing with config files and troubleshooting, on the server, doing TCP dumps. But they're sitting there going, I heard I should learn Python. Should I start doing that? But you're going to say, hey, we need you to set up a TCP server, listening on the ESL socket, that gets a dial plan from a REST API, and their head's going to explode. They're going to say, why are you asking me to do this? I don't know how to start. And I was actually on this end when I started at phone.com. I had been mostly an IT guy. And our CTO, Alon Cohen, who many of you probably have heard of and might even know, I remember once I was talking to him and I was explaining, hey, I'm learning programming, I'm setting up Freeswitch, in a Vagrant box on my laptop, and he looked at me, he said, perfect, keep doing it, keep learning that. That's what we run on, you should do it. And I took that and I ran with it. So if you are a leader, don't discount what just a little bit of encouragement can do to motivate someone to really move into the direction that you need them to move. All right, so for the contributors, what you have to do, and it sounds maybe a little pedantic, is you've got to read the docs and you've got to read the code, okay? It's amazing how often as engineers, we just go right into solving the problem, right? We just want to start building the solution, right? And we don't take the time to read the code, right? And it's all open source. And even if you don't know C, you can read it. You can read the comments in there. Just go to github.com/signalwire/freeswitch, and you go source, mod, application, whatever it is, mod, conference. You can find the code, read it, and kind of get an idea for how it works. Read all the docs, and this also includes mailing lists and forums as well. And I can give a little anecdote for this. When we rebuilt our system, we rebuilt it on Lua. We kind of had an amalgam of Freeswitch, Asterisk, with Perl all over the place kind of in there. And we consolidated it all on Asterisk and rewrote it all in Lua. Right? And we were getting to the point where we're ready to deploy. We're ready to really start putting some real traffic on it. And we had this sort of setup, which we had this main script that was going to send calls out to the user. So it build this big bridge string. If you know bridge strings in Freeswitch, it was a simultaneous ring, right, to ring groups. And we'd hit a certain amount of calls, and everything would just come to a halt. PDD blasting through the roof. Even connected calls would start hearing audio chopping in and out. And we just couldn't figure it out. We were looking at the server. Is it a problem with the operating system? Is it a problem with the network? What's going on? But everything looked fine on the server. No CPU problems, no memory problems. And so I'm scouring through the mailing list, and I found this. And I won't read the whole thing, but you can see there in the middle it says, if you're going to do session execute bridge dial string like I was doing, this is a blocking call, and it won't return right until the bridge is done. So your script's going to live around. If you don't need to remain in the script, you should set a custom variable to the destination you want to dial, and then execute the bridge in the XML dial plan. And I read that, and I went, well, that sounds good, but who's this person writing this? This could be anybody. And it was Anthony Minasali, and I said, I'm going to see if this guy really knows anything about Freeswitch. So I set it up. Instead, I just set the variable in the script, exited out, did the bridge in the dial plan. Next day, when we hit that threshold, all the problems disappeared. We still had some other performance issues we had to deal with, but from there, we were even amazed of how many more calls we could get once we solved that problem. And I was lost until I found that. And Anthony had already done all the work for me. I just had to take the time to dig in and find it. I have another example. I'm going to skip it. I'll talk about it real quick, but we had an issue we deployed Camalio to do our presence. We had some clients, just a small amount, complaining that their BLF lights weren't lighting up. And then eventually, not me, but someone found forced dummy dialogue, and it says because some SIP clients expect at least one dialogue. And by default, Camalio just sends out with a blank body if you don't have anything. And the dummy word I really took offense to, because that's what I felt like while I was trying to figure out this issue. I was ready to just jump through loops to try to solve this problem, but the person who took the time to read the docs found that the problem was already solved for us. All right, so moving on, the next is you got to create the right culture. So the first is, if you're a leader, you got to give your team freedom and responsibility. And what this looks like is you got to balance these two things. All right, on the left there, I have an AI-generated image of some loafers trying to program. And on the right is just a pie chart representing the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 principle. So social loafing is a phenomenon we all know very well, which is that a person is less likely to exert effort in a group than they are if they're acting as an individual, right? If you've ever been to college and been in a group project, you know what that's like. And we have this on our teams. We know that there's people who are doing a lot more than other people, And what we tend to do is then start piling all the work onto those people who are very productive. And that's where you have to balance it with this 80-20 principle, which is the idea that 80% of the effort is usually produced by 20% of the input, right? 20% of your people are producing 80% of the results, and you'll pile on more things from them. Requests come in, right? Bug reports, feature requests, and you pile it on. And what happens there is that person who could be helping you modernize the stack, make it better, is now overburdened by all the problems coming in. So the person who's maybe more of the social loafer, give them more responsibility. The person that you know is really productive, give them more freedom so they can really think about what needs to be done and where you need to go. The next is for the contributors, right? If you want to be that 20%er, is don't just fix problems, create solutions. When you're overwhelmed, when you're getting just constant reports of something's wrong, maybe you're on call even, and you just start to think everything's a problem, right? Someone comes in with an idea and you say, no, all you see is a problem with implementing it. Someone comes with a bug report and you go, well, maybe that bug always was there. Maybe they could just live with it, right? Everything just is a problem that you have to solve. But you need to change your mindset. If you're going to modernize your stack, you've got to start thinking in terms of solutions. Don't just think in terms of problems, because otherwise, if you're just fixing problems, it's going to look like this. You're going to build that wall again. All right, and last is block and tackle. Block and tackle looks like this. It's a system of pulleys that's used to distribute weight when you're trying to move a load or some object, right? You distribute the weight, and it makes it easier. You don't have to exert as much effort to move it. And many of you, if you're dealing with a legacy VoIP stack, it feels like a load, right? It's a load on your mind. It's just a load on you all the time. And what you need to do is you need to start blocking and tackling. And as a leader, what you need to do is, once you've set up those right people, you've given them the right amount of time, you've given the right people responsibility, the other people more freedom to start thinking about the solutions, you need to keep your eye on the ball. You need to be the one that has the vision of where you're going. My boss, Alok at phone.com, was really good at this. He was able to kind of shield us from all the business concerns, right? All the organizational concerns, which are real, which are very important, so that we could focus on where we were going and we could keep our eye on the ball. And that term, eye on the ball, it's a baseball term. I've got 4 kids, and they're all baseball age. And so I'm doing this a lot. All right, eye on the ball, pitching the ball. All right, eye on the ball, pitch him on the ball. And you always say that, eye on the ball, because a little kid, when he's up to bat, he's looking right at you. He's ready to hit it. He's excited. And the minute that ball leaves your hand, squirrel, right? Oh, look, grandma's here to watch me. They can't keep their attention. Once you throw them the ball, it's gone. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, are you comparing us professional adults to 5-year-olds playing baseball? You think our attention span is that bad? And I am not saying that. I would never say that. Doesn't mean it's not true. I just would never say it. All right? But you have to make sure everyone keeps their eye on the ball. And now, as a contributor, what you want to do is add a feature and fix a bug, or redesign some code, right? What I know what we want to do, especially if you're a contributor, if you're an engineer, is no, I just want to work on the new thing. It's a brand new thing. That's what I want to think about. But you've got to do both at the same time. It's the way you're going to distribute that weight, and you're going to be able to lift that load, right? Maybe you're going to have to do a full rewrite, right? A brand new system. We had to do that. Set up a whole system while maintaining the old one. Maybe you're able to just take what you have and improve on it. But either way, you're going to have to do this. Features come in, add the features. Bugs come in, fix the bugs. But at the same time, redesign the code, right? That way, you're constantly improving it. And pretty soon, you can wrap your head around and your hands around this thing that you think you would never understand because you kept doing both at the same time. All right? So if you use the tools you've gained this week and you kind of filter it through these principles, you'll be able to take that system and make it your own. And pretty soon, a cool new feature comes in, like AI, right, which is probably coming down the pipe for you, right? You'll be able to implement it. You'll know exactly what you can do. You'll have an idea of where you can go, and you won't have to worry about all the other problems that you're worrying about right now. All right, and once you do that, congratulations. You're on your way to having a modern VoIP stack that you can manage. That's it. Any questions?
That's a good question, Brandon. Are there any questions? Any questions for Brandon Youngdale? I'm not seeing any right now, Brandon.
All right.
David, were you kind of raising your hand? I think David, it was close enough to raising it for me to go over and investigate the situation. So I'll come to David up this way. Here we are, David. What would you like to ask?
It seems like you have good buy-in from your CTO that's encouraging you to sit and play. What do you do in a situation where the boss just looks at output and says, okay, this looks half decent, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing?
Yeah, what do you do if your boss is just saying, got to get it out, got to get it out?
You just look for a new job.
I mean, no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, you gotta. I mean, I think you probably need to level with them, right? Level with your boss and say, hey, this isn't going to work, right? We're going to keep having problems, and you got to deal with it, you know, as straightforward as you can. Yeah.
A dose of realism.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. Any further questions for young Brandon? Youngdale Brandon. Where was that coming from? That's coming from our friend Liviu. Okay, Liviu.
Hey, Brandon. Thank you for the awesome presentation. My question is kind of related to testing. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with it, given that you mentioned you are constantly having to push out all kinds of features, and which are probably, you know, SIP-related, signaling-related, various scenarios, so on and so forth. Do you also take the time, which probably from a rough estimation would double your amount of invested time into that feature, to also write the tests for it, you know, system tests and that kind of stuff?
You know, I think you can do it, you know, with testing that's maybe not ideal, but you do have to do some testing. I remember when we first started, right, we had to just, me and my coworker James, we just started going through and figuring out how everything worked, because it wasn't really documented everywhere. What happens when you do this in this scenario? And we had to write it down. And then from there, eventually, someone else was able to take that over from us. And then eventually, you start making more automated tests. But at first, you kind of just have to do what you have to do, which might just be making lots of phone calls.
Yeah, exactly, because we kind of have the same problem with getting more features than we can manage to cover with the tests.
Yeah.
And that's why we're...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liviu, and thank you, Brandon.
All right, thank you.
Got time for one more question, if there is one in the audience. It's a little bit like an auction, that people seem a bit reticent to put their hands up, and then there's a big flow of them sometimes. Any more questions here? Okay, in that case, let's give Brandon a very big thank you.